Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, with a great bonus this Thursday. A very special guest here in the studio with us, which is a great gift to us. Layla Miller, you probably know her as the person who wrote Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues. She wrote it for Catholic Answers Press and let Trent Horn put his name on it with her. She also wrote a very fine book about divorce, which has changed many people's lives, called Primal Loss, and followed that up with a newer book, Impossible Marriages Redeemed. Layla Miller, thank you for being with us.
I'm so glad to be here, Cy.
And we're going to talk about something that's right in your wheelhouse, comes up from your project that you dragged Trent through, or carried him on your back.
Oh, yeah. He, I was pretty generous with him, so yeah.
Well, thank you for letting him put his name on the book.
Yeah.
But How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, we thought, this didn't get less relevant, did it? It just seems like, I don't even know, like, that you write a book like that and then they come up with more stuff that you got to have answers for.
I think we may need a few more chapters here, but we tackled 10 different moral issues that are all dealing with human sexuality, and you can imagine what those are. But yeah, it seems like there's more every day. We keep adding, it's not an easy culture anymore.
No, and I really do feel like it's brutal on the middle schoolers and teenagers. I mean, just brutal. Like the societal propaganda that's able to take all that's good about an adolescent, the desire to be fair, the desire to welcome everyone and make and be morally brave and good. All of that is taken and twisted in the culture.
Yeah, they're exploiting these kids, and inverting everything and giving them no foundation to begin with, and then coming in with these, inverted natural law things that are ending up, and you combine that with social media, which is just toxic.
Right.
And you're getting all these poor. I know middle school's the worst, and they're depressed. They're disconnected from truth. They're disconnected from each other. They're just in full on chaos. I mean that whole situation is, our culture is chaos. I always used to say, when Dean and I were raising our first group of kids in the 90s, we didn't have to worry about most of the things that are in that book, as far as all the, obviously, the LGBTQ stuff and even the pornography, because there wasn't really online stuff at that point. Right. So we have had two different experiences with raising kids, and now the younger ones coming up have had a completely different experience in the culture. And so it's actually making parents very anxiety-ridden, because whereas you could count on the culture to kind of back you up pretty much on keeping a child innocent in the preschool years, for example, or even into middle school, you're trying to kind of protect children and keep them healthy. And but now that's all blown to bits.
Right.
Now we're even grooming preschoolers with all this Nickelodeon stuff that's coming out now.
I really couldn't believe some of that, by the way. I mean, and I want to let the listener know, we're actually going to talk about teenagers today, talking to teenagers about tough moral issues. And so if you have teenagers, or if some are on the cusp of their teen years and you'd like to know about how to effectively talk to them about these tough moral issues, because you ain't going to get help from Nickelodeon, 888-318-7884 is the number, 888-318-7884. But I was listening to a radio show where they were playing some of the audio from Nickelodeon shows now, and it sounds like they have like the Palestinian terrorists make fun videos for kids about why to hate Jews, and the Soviet Union used to make fun videos about, for kids about why to turn in your parents to the authorities.
Right.
It really seems at that level of propaganda to children.
There's the word I was going to say. It's straight up propaganda.
Yeah.
There's no other way to phrase that. And it's grooming. They're grooming these kids. And it's so shocking because, like you say, we wouldn't even, you said, I can't believe it. We can't believe it. Anybody who's lived, in previous decades, and you realize, what am I looking at? Like, how is this even allowed?
Right.
How is it even legal that you're allowed to show a little child this type of sexual propaganda?
Right.
Used to put,
when they're in their latent years, like
the latency period, right?
This is not supposed to be a sexualized period, and
right.
we're prudes if we say that. We're,
right.
Well, get over it.
And what Catholics need to understand too is that the Church herself. There's a document I always tell parents, please print this off of your computer. It's called "The Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality," and it's by the Pontifical Council for the Family, 1995. And in that, it tells you it's how to it's sexual education for children in the home. It gives parents really good guidance for what to do when children are small and then as they get older. And one of the things it says is you are not even to introduce or broach the subject of homosexuality with any child before puberty. Because this is just, like you said, it's called the latency period, and JP2 called it the years of innocence.
Yeah.
And now you think about that, you look back and like, that was 1995. It's mind-blowing to think that you could somehow even keep this propaganda from your small children. They aren't even supposed to hear that it exists, that it's a thing.
Right.
And now it's in every kids show, it's in every library, it's in every school, it's on, signs in the shopping centers, it's everywhere. So that's how far we've fallen so quickly. So to be a parent and try to keep that from your children, it almost seems laughable now, but that is the imperative, is to not expose your child to these things in their latency period.
Again, you're welcome to call with your questions about talking to teens about tough moral issues. 888-318-7884. The book that Trent and Layla wrote together, Made This Way: How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues. And one of the strategies you take in the book is, well, this is the way you could talk to a child of this age. This is a way you could talk to a child of this age, and then moving up. And so we'll focus on the teen years today. But there is a dangerous naivete, I would say, among many Christians that there's an accommodation possible between Christian faith, as Jesus himself taught it, and the sexual revolution.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No. Yeah, again, we're kind of swimming in this sexual revolution propaganda, and we as Catholics, and we're fallen human beings, and we always want to be liked. I mean, everybody kind of wants to go along with what the people they hang around are saying or doing, and so as this has gotten worse, it's harder and harder to push back from it now, but we're starting to see how far we've fallen. And so the question is, can we be courageous enough to say, wait a second, I don't think what is being spoken about now and what is being taught now is compatible with what we know from Christian teaching and Christian thought. I don't believe that Christ would be okay with, this or this. And I know that my Catholic faith is not compatible with what the sexual revolution has, foisted on all of us. So how do we make that break? How are we going to be different from the culture, which of course Christ said we're supposed to be, right? We're supposed to be different from the world. That's actually part of the things I want to say about living with teens and teaching teens is if we can't be courageous enough as parents to be different from the culture and to speak against these things that are happening in the culture, how on earth are we going to expect our teens to have that strength to do it if they don't see us do it? So first it has to start with the parents being courageous and saying, whoa, I'm going to put the brakes on this. I'm going to find out my faith. That's another thing. That's part of why we wrote this book too. It's like we've said it's kind of like a stealth catechesis where each chapter begins with what the church teaches on this particular topic because we haven't been well catechized, you know.
Exactly.
And so the parents are really scared. They're petrified because they don't know how to teach their kids. They know something's terribly wrong, but they don't know how to say it. So so that's part of what we have to do as adults. So we have to teach ourselves or learn, through whatever means, the catechism, books, podcasts, scripture, everything. We need to know our faith, and then we need to be able to articulate that and teach it to our kids in a way that makes sense so that they will say, oh, that's why everybody's so messed up. That's why everybody's so depressed.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what we have to do. So adults, we've got to catechize ourselves first and learn what the church teaches, what Christ teaches, how God created the world. And once we realize how things were ordered, we can get, and we can more easily then recognize disorder. And that's what we're all confused right now. And our kids are completely confused, and it's because this culture is designed to confuse them with disorder.
Yeah, designed, right.
It is absolutely designed for it.
888-318-7884, the number. When we come back, Layla, before we go to calls, I want to ask you about really the issue of the moment, which is how to talk to kids about the transgender, the whole transgender thing, in which I do think the better angels of their nature are being used against them, in the sense of saying, well, if you're really a compassionate person, then you have to go along with these things that obviously are contrary to reason, don't actually make any logical sense, as gender as something different than my sex, like that kind of. These are illogical things that if I say that they're illogical, I'm a bad person, in other words. So how do I help my teenager with that? We'll do that when we come back and take your calls for Layla Miller, 888-318-7884.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The best way to pray is simply to open our minds and our hearts to God, to allow His presence to begin to fill us, to restore us, to refresh us, to make us new. The best way to pray is simply to be aware of that presence and to say yes to it, to give fiat to that presence as our Blessed Lady did. In that way, we delight in prayer, and God Himself delights in us.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. In studio, our friend Layla Miller, who wrote one of the books here at Catholic Answers, Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, with our own Trent Horn. She's also the author of Primal Loss, a book about the consequences of divorce. You're welcome to call with your questions this hour about talking to teens about tough moral issues. 888-318-7884, the number. We're going to do open forum second hour. So Jimmy will be here. We'll do our open forum second hour. But this hour, calls and questions on how to talk to teens about tough moral issues. So, Layla, I gave you time to think about it. We took the break. So the teen comes and says, it's not fair that people don't get to say whether they're a boy or a girl. It's just basic fairness, and you're being unfair by not going along with that. Yeah. How do you deal with that teenager?
Yeah. Well, you have to take them back, and you have to take a step back from that and talk about the difference between how someone feels, a feeling, versus what is, ontologically true. So we always love to say that we are pro-science. That's a big thing now. It's science. And even in the transgender ideology circles, they'll say, well, this is the science. And I always come back and I'm like, well, okay, but where is gender outside of the imagination? Like, where is that?
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I've never had anyone actually be able to answer that, because they said, well, you have to be who you are and what you are. And I'm like, well, okay, but where is gender? Like, if we're talking science, because we want to make this right, we want to make this this person be whole, where is that? Where is gender? Oh, well, so then you can start to say, look, maybe it's not so much that the body isn't conforming to the truth of who the person is. Maybe it's that the mind is having trouble, integrating with the body. But the body, we know scientifically, we can test the body. There's ways that we can see the body, but also even, chromosomally, we can test the body. We know that that's the body of a man.
Right.
And so if a person is feeling like a woman, that's in the mind, but it's nothing scientific that we can kind of hold on to, right? So maybe we need to work on, instead of drastically amputating things, mutilating a body that's undoable. Maybe first we should start to look into the mind and see, where's the integration that we can have there. Maybe there is something more to this, idea that the body is where we should start, and then see what we can do. We wouldn't do it, with anorexia, or with, there's that body dysmorphia where it's, some people want to amputate some of their limbs because they feel like they're disabled, but they're not.
Yeah.
We wouldn't say, well, gosh, there's certainly nothing wrong with what's going on in your head. Let's definitely amputate your limbs, because most people would say that doesn't make sense. Maybe we could teach them to be appreciative of the fact they have legs, or that there's something going on up here that we could fix, or start to treat or help. So we've inverted everything. So first I would kind of go towards that, like, what is ontologically true? What is biologically true? What is science? And then let's talk about feelings. And then we could talk about feelings, and we could talk about feeling side, because that's another part of it. But
so this is at an area where that is actually very helpful, because there's no science that says there wouldn't even be a science experiment that could prove such a thing, that what's in your imagination is real, even if what's in your imagination, even if it's just the image of yourself, even if it doesn't comport with all the physical evidence, it's real. There's no science that can prove that. That's not a provable proposition.
Right. And when someone says, this is another thing that always kind of throws me, and you can have these conversations, because teenagers like to talk. Hopefully they like to kind of banty things back and forth with you. But when someone says, if let's say I'm a woman and I say, you know what, I feel like a man. Okay, think of that. How would anyone who is a woman know what a man feels like?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't have any way of knowing what a man feels like.
Right.
So when someone says, well, or a man says, I feel like a woman, well, me as a woman, I'm thinking, how could you possibly know what a woman feels like? You aren't ontologically, biologically a woman, so why do you think whatever it is you're thinking actually is what a woman feels like?
Yeah.
You don't know that. You can't find that out. There's no way for you to know that. But we just kind of go along with it. We're like, yeah, you definitely feel like a woman.
Right.
Huh? How do we know that? We don't know that. So there's all this. It's very nebulous. It's very feelings-based, which, again, we do live in a feelings-based culture right now.
Sure. Right.
Which is why people think, well, it's not fair. It's not fair because what I'm feeling isn't being validated. It's like, well, we've never done that before. Like, we've never just said, we're just going to go with what anybody feels, and then we're going to tell them that that's truth.
Yeah.
This is all new. So that helps teens also maybe realize, this is something that in all the history of mankind, we really have, this is a new experiment.
Right.
So let's take it slowly, and let's really think these things through first.
Yeah, and 888-318-7884, the number, by the way, 888-318-7884. But let me ask you about this, because how much does this factor into the way that you speak to teens about moral issues? And that is, okay, what you said makes logical sense. I don't mean this in any way to demean teens. Logic, not always the primary driver. That there are other drivers in that, including not wanting to stand out among peers, and not wanting to have to say that the beloved teacher is, okay, as much as you love that teacher, what they're saying is wrong.
Right.
Those distinctions are hard to make. If I love that teacher, well, that teacher is right.
Right. Yeah, and that's the tricky part, because we are, if you're to the point where the teen is already all feelings based and all, that's not compassionate. That doesn't feel right. I'm thinking with my emotions. You're going to have a hard time. That's why.
Yeah.
Part of what we did with the book is we said you kind of have to start young. If you start laying out the natural order for kids when they're smaller, it's going to be easier for them when they become teens to kind of resist that. Once it's past that point, I am not going to lie, it is a lot more difficult. They'll probably, as they get to be adults, come in contact with reality, and it's at a certain point, at least, whatever you're telling them as teens will resonate later on, because, just going by your feelings, at some point that's going to come into clash with actual truth, and they're going to have a crisis of some sort. So hopefully they'll still fall back on what you told them as a teen. But if you can, you're going to try to get them younger than that, and you're going to try to lay that foundation earlier so that you don't have to run into that when they're teens.
Tackling tough moral issues with teens this hour with Layla Miller, the author of Made This Way, the co-author. I'm not trying to diminish. Well, I am actually.
We love
trying
Trent.
To,
we love him.
Yes, you do. Made This Way. Yes, we do. That's what I meant to say. That came out wrong. Made This Way: How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues by Layla Miller, our guest, and Trent Horn. If you have questions about talking to your teens, or maybe you're getting ready for those teen years and you'd like some help, 888-318-7884. We go now to New York, listening on Catholic.com. Renee on Catholic.com. Go ahead with your question for Layla.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Happy to.
Hi, Renee.
Hi. So I just have a question. I'm not a parent, but I am an ELA teacher in high school, and I've been trying to find a good way to kind of navigate the LGBT issues, because I want, like, especially a lot of our LGBT kids have just a lot of other issues. Sometimes it's related to the LGBT stuff, sometimes it's not. But, how do I, be there and support and accept them as people, also kind of following school rules, while still, while not necessarily causing scandal or doing something that goes a little too far to where I might be, in sin or affirming something I shouldn't.
Yeah, I remember last time I was here a couple years ago, and Trent and I were talking about the book, and there was a similar question from a public school teacher. It is very difficult to be a public school teacher in so many ways, as you know. I mean, your hands are tied, and you could run afoul of their policies. I don't have a lot of great advice, because I think more and more you're going to be marginalized no matter what you try to do there in a public school. I hope, and I don't know if this is possible, but I hope you're able to maybe, first of all, wear a simple cross or a crucifix around your neck to kind of identify yourself to those students as someone who is a Christian, and then by your love for these students and your compassion for them. And maybe, I don't know, every now and then you could talk not so much about what's going on with their LGBT stuff, which I'm sure a lot of people want to affirm them constantly and applaud them and pat them on the back and encourage them in that direction. But maybe you could befriend in a different way, and maybe talk about some of the things that are really hard in their lives, like some other things. Like a lot of them, let me tell you from my research, a lot of them are children of divorce, and they're looking for stability. They're looking for a family. When their identity is shattered in a divorce situation, they go to the next family, and the LGBT community is great in taking people in and making them feel loved and making them feel accepted and making them feel like we're never going to leave you, we're not going to abandon you. So, maybe there's a way you could find out other things about their lives that are important or that were wounding to them, and talk to them about that. And I don't know how much you can share about who you are and your truth and even your God. I don't know, but maybe you're that compassionate teacher that is not like the other teachers, who's more interested in other things besides their LGBT identity. And maybe they will see that cross and maybe come to you in some other way, or keep that in mind. But I do not envy you. I don't know how public school teachers are handling any of this at this point.
What do you think, Renee?
Yeah, I think that definitely helps in terms of, like, certain directions. Because, naturally, especially with ELA, you can kind of support students a little bit more than you can in other subjects. There is mandatory curriculum with LGBT stuff at this point. I still can I still wear my crosses and stuff. So I think, I just get frightened if it ever comes up, because we have I've come across a lot of trans kids so far, and a lot of them have issues, say, with their parents, where their parents are not affirming. And as much as I feel for the kids, I really do agree with their parents in some ways, not necessarily how the kid's being treated, but, with the, not making those dramatic changes to their bodies at this age.
Is there any way you can say, are you allowed to say something like, I'm sure your parents love you very, very much, and that's why they're showing concern when things are, changing in this way. Or I just don't know how much you're allowed to say. I mean, to be honest, there does come a point, and I hate to say this, but there does come a point that if the culture and a public school gets so restrictive and so difficult that you can't make a move without possibly sinning, then you need to find something else, because first and foremost, you need to make sure that you can save your own soul and not go against your own integrity and your own faith before anything else. If we can't if we can't look to our own soul first, then it's not gonna, nothing else is gonna matter. But I just wonder if you can do an end run around some of it to almost show that another adult actually does think perhaps this isn't, all in the best thing ever. But I can't imagine it. When you say something like there are trans kids and you have this plural, or there are all these LGBT kids, and I went to a massive public high school. I graduated in '85. Yeah, I'm old. But it was public, and we didn't have any of this. So all this is just overwhelming right now, and it's rough.
Thanks, Renee. Thank you very, very much. We do hear quite a bit from public school teachers, as a matter of fact, many of whom have to walk a very careful line. And in some places, I'm sure the line is it's intolerable. You can't walk it anymore. I've heard that in some of the California schools. We'll talk more with Layla Miller right after this.
Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
If you spend any time on Twitter, Facebook, or mainstream media, you're probably familiar with the litany of slogans that skeptics employ to rescue you from the foolish belief that God exists. The constant onslaught seems to leave people with the idea that they have no alternative but to embrace atheism. How can a Christian respond? In One Less God Than You, John DeRosa breaks down 20 of the most common atheist challenges and shows you how to craft effective answers. Atheism is more aggressive and widespread than ever. Read One Less God Than You and prepare yourself to respond with the joyful truth that God is real. To get your copy of One Less God Than You, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Matt Swaim here. Join us tomorrow for a Friday edition of the Sunrise Morning Show, when we look ahead to the Sunday Mass readings and hear Mark's account of Jesus calming the wind and the waves. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest this hour is Layla Miller, author with Trent Horn of Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues. If you have questions about your teens facing tough moral issues and you'd like some help on how to give helpful Catholic answers, because I think many of us, I'd include myself in this, I could probably give an adequate Catholic answer, but I want to be able to answer in a way that's actually helpful to the person. And I am baffled by how completely, how should we say that, indoctrinated many young people are into a certain way of thinking. Mm-hmm. And so that, I was telling some people about this the other day, that one of the young people in the circle of my children's friends posts on her Facebook page about which words you can use and which words you can't use anymore. And and she's a kid with a good heart. She's trying to do something good, mm-hmm. but telling us that you can't say this about, you can't say biological male anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm probably not going to stop. Thanks for the help, but I'm probably not going to stop saying biological male. As a matter of fact, I'd love to not say biological male. I'd love to just say male like we used to, because we all knew that there's a difference between a man and a woman, but right. But you can't. So I don't know. It actually kind of shocks you how indoctrinated that they are. That in my generation, you would have had this idea of, and I know that's always old man talk to say in my generation, but this idea of free speech was like, don't tell me what to say. I'll say what,
Right.
They don't feel that way anymore.
gone.
They say, we're all saying this. We're all going this way. And so then they get confronted with a moral issue, and they got to go with the school in this direction or that. And I think that's what your book, Made This Way, addresses to a great deal. But so let me throw another tough moral issue out at you, okay? And this was maybe, we used to think a few years ago this was the toughest one. This is nothing compared to the transgender one now, but gay marriage, for example. The child is a good kid, says, well, if you could get married, why can't gay people get married? How do you deal with a teenager on that?
Right. So gay marriage, again, my tact is always to use reason, and to say something has to make sense. And hopefully we still are hardwired on some level
Right.
to recognize truth, or to at least, think reasonably through something and want it to make sense. Because really, the kids are living in chaos. They're not happy. I mean, teens are not happy today. It's not a happy group of kids. But they want something firm, and they think they're getting it in all these different places, but really they're getting confusion. So I would say, the first thing I would say is we always have to define our terms before we can have a discussion about something. So oftentimes I will ask people, not just teens, but adults as well, define marriage. And right there, that's usually, it stumps them. It's something like, it's when two people want to enter into a contract. I'm like, oh, okay. Why two people?
Yeah.
Oh, and then you say, oh, well, and we know, well, it's because there's a biological imperative that it was a man and a
unfortunately,
wife.
if they've been watching the TLC network or something
Exactly.
now, they've decided, well, it's not true.
And exactly, and then it could go in that direction too, and then they're going to be even more, confused about things, and then we can talk more about, well, then why not bring in, children and animals and 6 people, and and so if they want to expand that, we can talk about that, because we want to go to their logical. You go to the end of their logical argument. What is the conclusion of what you're saying here? But if you can't really debate marriage and whether or not someone should be allowed to get married if they're 2 men or 2 women, unless you define what it is you're debating. So what is marriage? And then they don't know. And so what I find interesting is that because they can't define it, because they don't know what it is, and if they say like, well, it's a contract where people want to agree to certain things and live together, and I said, oh, this is like that could apply to 2 old sisters who want to have an apartment together, and they're they're living together, they're signing contract with the. Well, is that marriage? No, it's not marriage. Okay, well, what makes marriage different? Anyway, somehow we get down to that it's either a love relationship or a sex relationship, or it has something like that in there. So then you can say, okay, so it's 2 people who are in love, and well, okay, and they'll say that 2 people who are in love who want to, okay, well, has love ever been part of an essence of being married? Like when you go to get your marriage license, was that one thing that they made you prove? You need to prove that you're in love before we'll give you a marriage license. You have this feeling. Well, no. Okay. Well, so it can't be just that you feel this romantic love for someone. That can't be what it is. It never was before. And if it is now, then we have to take that to its logical conclusion. There's several conversations you can have with that. But what I think is interesting is that the whole time of human history, before 2 seconds ago, historically, that marriage is something that had to be conjugal. You had to consummate a marriage for it to be a marriage, or you just had to be able to consummate. Even if you didn't consummate, like Mary and Joseph, but you still had to have the ability to consummate. And so I was telling the young group last night, I was talking to a group of young adults at a parish here, that a certain tell that they know it's not the same thing, that gay marriage and marriage is not the same thing, is that you can go to the UK's page on how to annul a marriage. UK is secular. They have had gay marriage much longer than America. They're very enlightened. You go to annulling a marriage, and again, civil authorities have always, not even church authorities, civil authorities have annulled marriages for generations for non-consummation.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys never had sex, you're not married, you can nullify this.
Yeah.
The UK says that is one way to nullify a marriage. One way a marriage is null is if it's not consummated. And then in parentheses it says, except for same-sex couples. Now, you have an exception to the rules of marriage for gay couples because they can't do what married people do. And everybody knows it. And here it is in black and white, and the UK has said, oh, except for you guys, you have a special set of rules that's different from other married couples. Well, if it's exactly the same and there's no difference and love is love is love, why is there a separate legal rule for gay couples that does not include heterosexual couples? Just those types of things to make them see this isn't the same thing.
Right.
And even secular people, when it comes down to it, will admit it's not the same thing. And then, you go into more about what marriage actually is and what it's for and its purpose. And but it is those kind of things you have to arm yourself with knowledge first.
Yep.
And with love to have this conversation without contention, but you need to have that knowledge and be armed with it.
And it is a lot of knowledge you need in a society that's just blithely kind of just changing the rules constantly and just blithely denying basic biological and physical facts. You have to prepare yourself to be able to respond to all that. Let's go to Mary in Miles, Michigan. Mary, thank you so much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Layla Miller.
Yes, I had he's 17 now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, he's 17 now, but at 13 in middle school, his friends around him looked at him, and because he was very sheltered, and I have a typical home that I grew up in the 50s, 60s. He grew up in just recently here, and so he was just a little boy at 13, and they looked at him and said, "You're gay," and he's been spiraling downhill. I'm doing better, I think, getting his head above water at this point, but it's still been such a struggle with the whole world saying, "That's okay, that's wonderful." And it wasn't his choice. It was something thrown at him. So, we've had suicidal problems. I have him in Christian counseling. I finally found a lady, but that's what she calls herself. But she even says, well, I'm not going to not love him because, no, I'm telling you, we need to tell him that he's a man. We need to build up his manhood.
Sure.
That's what I've been working on.
Yeah, that's really sad because, again, this is a generation that is very emotional to begin with. So they're told something and and he's feeling confused about it and distraught, and everything he's feeling he thinks is true. Whatever I feel is true. Whatever I feel is true, which isn't the case. I have to tell you, first of all, thank you for wanting to affirm him as a male, as a man. But he also needs to hear that from a lot of men. So a huge part of this is...
I've got a husband of 30 years, and I've got a papa and grandpa around. So, but they're all a little bit confused in the world, too. So I don't have, people saying it to me, but, we're trying to, affirmate that. We're trying.
Could you find a therapist who is a man, like a male Christian therapist? That might be. Men need to form men. I mean, that's just the bottom line. It is very hard for a woman to. Women cannot form men into men. It just doesn't work that way. They're different from us. And so a man, to be a man, to kind of take that mantle from boy to manhood, has to have a man affirm him in that. And I mean, it's huge. It's just part of their nature. So the path to manhood has to be shown by other men. So you're going to have to find some masculine, good, virtuous men to affirm him as one of them. You're a man like us. And here's what men do. Men protect, men provide, men are leaders. Men sacrifice, for others. That is, these are just simple truths, but it has to be affirmed to him. And so the more you can get these wonderful men around him to affirm him in that, the better. He's not like a woman, no man is like a woman, really, unless they've been completely disordered. We don't want to go in that direction anymore. So, and it doesn't mean like this machismo or this, kind of, brutishness, none of that at all. But just that, men are masculine. They protect women. They protect children. That's their job. They provide when they get ready to get married. and they lead. They're leaders. So, but we need men to tell them that. So if I were you, I would. It's just the same. It's the sort of same thing when men when we go to counselors or marriage counselors. They always say try to find a male marriage counselor. Usually because men take it a lot better from other men than from a woman. And that's just a natural order thing, and it's okay. That there's nothing wrong with that. But.
Well, I think part of the male identity is proving yourself to other men, and so a woman just can't provide that.
Right.
Just can't provide the thing that you need. I would like to suggest to you CatholicCounselors.com, and you might write that down, CatholicCounselors.com. Our friend and just a very fine. Catholic radio broadcaster as well, runs that site and will help you connect with counseling maybe that could be helpful to you. Maybe a counselor in person or maybe somebody over the internet. That's Greg Popchak who started that. So I would just suggest before we go to the break here, if you're looking for that, try CatholicCounselors.com. I've myself have found them very helpful, and I imagine they might be helpful to you, Mary. Thank you very, very much. And your son sounds like just a fine person, but it's so cruel the way our society, in the name of affirming certain things, denies that sometimes a boy just takes a little while to develop,
right.
Or he's sweet and he's young and he's innocent compared to his peers. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, and we used to just take a boy like that under the wing, and he'll get there. So I hope that does happen, Mary. Thanks for the call. We'll take a quick break.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
He was a 10th century saint, priest, mystic, and doctor of the Church, honored as the first poet of Armenia.
Matthew Bunsen and the Doctors of the Church.
Gregory of Narek is revered by Armenians as a watchful angel in human form. His masterwork, the Book of Lamentations, was intended to be his last testament, an encyclopedia of prayer for all nations. He was named a Doctor of the Church in 2015.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Turn right now. Our number 888-318-7884. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Layla Miller in studio with us, we're glad you're here in California, and you are able to be here in the studio. We're talking with teens, actually, about tough moral issues. Layla, with our good friend and colleague Trent Horn, wrote the book Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues. On the line now. By the way, you're welcome to call, because we do have a bit of time left, and we will get you in if you call 888-318-7884. Brandon in Bowling Green, Ohio, watching on YouTube Live. You are next, Brandon. Go ahead with your question for Layla.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm calling in today because we sometimes say that, kids today are being indoctrinated by media or whatever source we may choose to talk about in terms of these different LGBT ideologies or other moral issues. But at the same time, they will retort and say, well, you only believe this because you've been indoctrinated growing up in your faith. So I guess my question is, how would we defend that we're not indoctrinated, but asserting that there's something indoctrinating them? How do we draw that difference?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we actually address that in the book. You're right. I mean, the people who are secular, they do indoctrinate their children, and the people who are Catholic also indoctrinate their children. The word indoctrinate, and this might have been where Trent was, more the author of that part, but I think it's from the Latin, but it means to teach. So it's it's what we're teaching our kids. So yes, everyone, every parent, every teacher is going to indoctrinate, literally teach our kids. So it's a question of what we are going to indoctrinate with. So a Catholic would say, and we just don't use that term because obviously it's used as a derogatory term. It's seen as a negative, but we are indoctrinating our children with doctrine. That's what we do. So the question is, what are we going to be indoctrinating children with? Are we going to indoctrinate them with things that are true? And by truth, what is truth? Truth is what comports with reality. Are we going to indoctrinate them with truth, or are we going to indoctrinate them with something that is based on feelings, lies, passing fads, things that don't comport with reality? So, like, for example, going back to the transgenderism thing, you can say, you could be a guy and say, I'm a girl, but what corresponds with actual reality? Well, the fact that no, you're not a girl. Actual reality shows that you are a guy, and we can actually put that under a microscope. We can know this. So indoctrination, absolutely. You can give them that point and say, you're absolutely right. It means to teach, and you're right. We're going to teach this way. You're going to teach this way. The question is, who's teaching the truth?
Brandon?
Yeah, thank you very much. That really clears it up. Looking at words, connotation and denotation, sometimes we miss what words mean and only think of it how we hear them. So thank you very much for the clarification.
Well, also there's this thing that Catholics believe in that actually most of the world believed in for most of its history in one way or another, called natural law. And natural law is a way of saying, is exploring human nature, essentially, and the nature of God's creation to find out what is good and what is not good, what is properly done and what is evil to do. And so we don't want to move people past reasoning. And I would say there's an evil kind of indoctrination that says, we don't want you to reason about it. Believe it because the party teaches it, or believe it because that's what our team teaches. And I do think you won't find that in the Catholic Church, the sense that, well, that's just what our team says. No, it has to be, especially with moral issues, rooted, connected to the natural law. That's not to say that God hasn't revealed things beyond the natural law. So, like Layla says, the truth is what comports with reality. Well, okay, so you say, we say that you're indoctrinating children, you say we're indoctrinating children. Okay, how about this? Let's have a conversation about what reality is, and then we'll proceed to talk about what we should teach our children. And if you find someone who won't have that conversation but says, you only want to do that because you're sexist, you only want to do that because you're racist, you only want to do that for well, now you're not willing to have a conversation about the truth. We can't have a conversation.
Yeah, try having a conversation or a discussion with someone who wants to do it based on feelings. See how far you get with that. It's not easy. In fact, it goes nowhere.
Brandon, I'm going to leave that there. A caller just dropped, but I do want to read what this caller said. It's an anonymous caller. How would I handle a 14-year-old boy who is angry because he is being treated unfairly because he is too masculine and not part of the gay community?
Wow. Well, I'd want to know a little bit more about that. I mean, is it because at school there's a ton of gay people or gay, young men who are bullying him like that? I mean, that would be, if that's so, gosh, well, first of all, the 14-year-old boy needs to be around, again, I know it sounds simplistic, but you have to cultivate friendships with other boys who aren't doing that to him, and he needs to be told by his dad, hopefully, and by other men, but by his mom, by everyone, that it's a wonderful thing that he's a man. It's a wonderful thing that he was made masculine, that's how God intended it. And that, this time in early high school or whatever will not last forever. And we need, the world needs heroes. The world needs, really every boy is hardwired to want to be a hero. And so by being masculine, by being who God made him to be, he's actually destined to be a hero if he keeps on this track. So I would just really, I don't like the idea of anyone being, hopefully by treated unfairly. I hope that doesn't mean that he's being bullied or that they're being, really bad to him. Because honestly, it's also our job to protect our kids from that type of thing. And I would get him out of that influence, to be honest, and have him around some healthier kids, if possible.
Our number is 888-318-7884. Something I was supposed to have said several times during the program, but did not. The book Made This Way that I have mentioned by our guest, Layla Miller, and her co-author, our colleague, Trent Horn, Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, is available right now at shop.catholic.com. And you can get 5 copies of it for just $25. So if it's something you maybe want to share with family members or share with others about how to do this, it's an important book because the society's got no shortage of new ideas about how to sell the propaganda of new forms of morality not related to reality, and not just to sell it, but to come up with new things that we have to say this is good that we used to say that's not good. That we have to say this is true. We didn't used to say that because it wasn't good and it wasn't true. And just because society changes its mind doesn't change the reality of it. If you want to talk to kids about that, Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, get a few copies, get 5 for just $25 at shop.catholic.com today, because Layla Miller has been here with us for this day. You did mention start early with kids.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
When kids are small, I've had questions from a lot of younger parents. They're very insecure, they're very worried, and they're rightly. I mean, they're terrified of what their children are going to face. And I always say, look, be confident. You were given these children by God. He equips you with what you need to teach them well. Don't be intimidated by the culture, because truth trumps everything. I mean, truth will always prevail, but don't cower. I mean, be confident that your children, when they're young, they are hardwired to trust you. They will trust their parents. We can't be like, well, what if I say this to my 6-year-old and he doesn't believe me? And
right.
We can't have that kind of insecurity. They think that the parents are God. They see us as the authority. They will trust you. They will believe you, unless you give them some reason not to trust you by lying to them or mistreating them. But generally speaking, God has hardwired them to trust their parents. So you have that authority from God. Teach clearly through the natural law. I always say, if it makes sense to them, they're going to stick with it. And if they don't stick with it as they get older, they'll probably come back to it, because we need things to make sense in life, or we're just floating. We're just chaotic, and we're just stressed and depressed. And so from the time that kids are little, we should use natural law principles to teach them about the nature of things. Like, this chair is for sitting. What happens when we don't sit on a chair and we climb on it? Oh, we get hurt. What happens if we, you can play games with them and say, well, what happens if we put molasses in the car, the car's gas tank? Oh, a little kid will laugh and say, well, the car won't run. Well, exactly, because it's not designed for molasses, is it? It's designed to have gasoline. What if I brush my hair with this electric mixer? What? That's going to be crazy. It's not going to work. Exactly. You have to use a thing according to its nature or according to its design. And little kids can get this. I mean, they get things like the fable of the emperor's new clothes. That's something all little kids should be memorizing that fable at this point,
right,
because that is what they need as a foundation to understand that even if everybody's saying something that you're supposed to think is true, but you just know it's not comporting with reality, that a little child can be the voice and say, that's not right. Yeah. So we need to give our kids this foundation of natural law. It's the same with our bodies. It's the same with just being a human. God designed us in a certain way. You can see the design. You use ourselves and our bodies and our humanity in the way that God designed it to be used. Marriage, sexuality, all of it. And you will not have the disasters that you're going to see if you misuse that design. And that's true of the things we make, like tables and hair dryers and whatever else. And it's true of what God makes. So natural law is what we need to bring back and teach our kids what is the nature of a thing and what's its purpose.
Layla Miller, thank you very much.
Thank you, Cy.
The book Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, available at shop.catholic.com. And if you are one of those, especially if you maybe are an adult waking up to the idea that the divorce that happened when you were a child, that wasn't right, what happened to you. Primal Loss is the book for you. And if you're in a marriage where you're not sure whether divorce is the path, try Impossible Marriages Redeemed by Layla Miller. Did I say that all right?
That's it. Thank you.
I hope we'll do this again soon, Layla.
I hope so.
Coming up next, Jimmy Akin Open Forum right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. As promised, open forum this hour. Jimmy Akin here in studio. If you have a question about the Catholic faith, Catholic people, Catholic history, or anything else, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. And you know who can call? Everybody, unless you are so young you need permission and you don't have permission. Other than that, just call 888-318-7884. Jimmy is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of The Bible is a Catholic Book, among many other things, and the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Hello, Jimmy Akin.
Hello, Cy Kellett, host of Catholic Answers Live.
It feels like it's getting longer. Are there going to be any others?
Well, you introduced me as the senior apologist at Catholic Answers. I thought I'd introduce you by your job, too.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I thank you very much.
I want to give you your props.
I appreciate. I want to get my props when I come home. No, propers. That's what Aretha Franklin says, right?
Yeah, but that's what props are, your proper respects.
Oh, yeah. All right. 888-318-7884, the number. It's Thursday, so I'm looking at you, Brandon. Do you know why I'm looking at you on a Thursday? You do? Okay. What's dropping tomorrow on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World?
Part 1 of our look at real-life Haitian zombies.
Oh, that's tomorrow. We're already on the Haitian zombies.
Yeah, because there are people in Haiti that, they will say, yeah, that person's a zombie. And in some cases, the person will even acknowledge, yeah, I'm a zombie.
Oh, so they can...
Well, some of them can. So the idea is you have someone you don't like, and you go to a magical professional known as a Bokor, and you have that person kill them in a special way that they then get magically revived from, and they are mentally impaired in this state. But there are things that can cause a Bokor to lose control of a zombie, and if that happens, some of the zombies may recover. So, for example, we talk about the phenomenon in general this week, but then next week we're going to talk about a specific individual. His name was Clervius Narcisse, and he had a documented death in 1961 at an American facility.
Okay.
So this is not like local, unqualified. They have his death record. They had the diagnosis of, why he died. He died in the hospital itself, and then he shows up years later walking around.
What is happening?
Yeah.
What is happening in this? All right, that's kind of a spooky one.
Yeah.
Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World drops on Fridays.
Also, have a note I want to give. So last week we were talking about the sheep-goat effect.
Oh yes, right.
In parapsychology, and I mentioned that the left-right distinction comes from the parable of the sheep and the goats, because the sheep are on Jesus' right side. In Matthew 25, the goats are on the left side.
Right.
Had a couple of notes about that from people who challenged it, and I did some further checking, and I can't rule out. I don't remember where I read that. It was years ago. But the apparently the concrete cause of this was around the time of the French Revolution. Originally in the National Assembly in France, and then in the Legislative Assembly, the certain partisans would sit on the left side, and then some would sit on the right side, and some would sit in the middle. And why they divided up that way is something I don't know that we know the answer to. It could be they were doing it based on the parable of the sheep and the goats, although it could have been something else too. We don't know. But what we do know is that's the concrete introduction of that phrase.
For the left-right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have not been experimenting. I meant to get a deck of cards and see if I could go through all 52 and write down my number, but I didn't do it. I forgot to do it.
Okay.
Very forgetful, in addition to apparently having no psychic powers. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Let's start in Denver, Colorado with Paul. Paul in Denver, thank you so much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, thank you so much. Hey, Jimmy. I had a heartbreaker this morning. I had to break up with this lady that I really loved.
Oh.
But, yes, it's a shame. However, it was out of my own selfishness. I did not want to be alone. Mm-hmm. But I am divorced myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a valid Catholic marriage, and it cannot be annulled according to the Archdiocese Tribunal.
Mm.
And I really, really miss the Catholic faith. I keep listening to Catholic Answers Live, EWTN Live, every single day, and I keep getting called back. So did I do the right thing, or have I gone too far in doing it? Because I'm just not sure if I did the right thing. So could you help me out on that?
Sure. So Jesus indicates, and this is not just in one passage, this is in multiple passages, it's in 3 of the 4 Gospels, and it's in St. Paul too, that if you're married and it's a valid marriage, it is not dissolved by death. It's not dissolved by anything but death. And so now there are a few qualifiers to that. It needs to be a sacramental marriage. It needs to be consummated. But if you got married to a baptized person in a Catholic church and it was consummated, then the church has to presume, until evidence emerges to the contrary, that that's a valid marriage. And if it's a valid marriage, then and that person is still alive, then you're still actually married to that person. It may not be possible to live with them right now for various reasons, but that's the person you're actually still married to. And so to marry another person or engage in relations with another person would be the sin of adultery, and that's one of the 10 commandments, that we cannot commit adultery. So it's a very serious situation. The church has to take the teaching of Jesus very seriously on this. Even if he only said it once, we'd have to take it seriously. But the fact it's in 3 of the 4 Gospels and St. Paul, in actually more than one place in St. Paul, is something that the church just can't ignore. And so in order to have a divorced person and be able to give them permission to remarry, the church needs to look at that marriage to see, was it valid? And in your case, based on what you say, the church did look at it and concluded there's not enough evidence to show that it was invalid. And so the church has to presume that you're still married to your original wife, and you should presume that you're still married to your original wife. And, hypothetically, the situation could get revisited if new evidence arrived, but as long as that hasn't been the case, you should assume that you're not free to marry or engage in relations with another person besides your original wife. And so from my perspective, given the facts as you've described them, you did the right thing. You did absolutely the right thing. God wants you to be close to him. He wants you to be leading a spiritual life. He wants you to be active in his son's church, and he wants you to receive all of the graces that are available to you as a Catholic, including through the sacraments. And in order to do that, one needs to be living a life that is free of mortal sin, and thus not one that involves adultery. And so I would say you made the hard choice, and you made the right choice. And as difficult as it may be at the moment, you'll ultimately be rewarded. God rewards people who are willing to follow him, even when it's difficult. And you've shown that you have a heart for God, and you're willing to follow him, even when it's difficult. And I would say praise God, and that is something that God respects, and it's something that other human beings should respect. You did something that was difficult and worthy of respect, and even if it feels difficult right now, it was the right decision, and you should take pride in it and should feel comfort that you are closer to God for having done the right thing.
Okay, Paul?
You said it. Thank you so much for your help on this.
God bless you, brother. Thank you. Right now, we have, first of all, Jimmy Akin is here for Open Forum this hour, and you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. We're on pace to hit 7,000 enrollments in the really quite new Catholic Answers School of Apologetics, and they've got the summer enrollment drive going right now, where you can just get great deals on courses at the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics. A full course, just $50. Mini courses, just $25. Visit the School of Apologetics category today at shop.catholic.com and go ahead and get started.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connection's set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
This is Conversations with Consequences, where we delve deeper into issues affecting our church, our country, and our core, the family.
As Catholics, we need to be informed, aware, and able to talk through some of the tough topics that we're facing in our culture and in our world. Conversations with Consequences gives us the tools to do so.
It's not enough to pray. We have to be a light for the world.
Conversations with Consequences, this Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Akin in studio with us this hour for Open Forum. When Jimmy's here, certainly any question is welcome, and any person is welcome, whether you're Catholic or not. We really enjoy talking with all kinds of folks, so you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Up next in Bend, Oregon, Bryce, watching on YouTube Live. Bryce, thanks for your call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy. Bryce? No. Hang on, Bryce, you might be talking. I might be on the wrong line. I don't know. Let me just check again. Oh, they changed the line on me. Okay, go ahead, Bryce.
Oh, okay. So, hi, Jimmy. I'm a new Catholic, and I've recently been going to a traditional Latin Mass because I like the liturgy, but I've noticed a lot of the other people that go there also kind of have doctrinal differences and criticisms and stuff like that. And so I want to defend the Second Vatican Council, and there are some people, other parishioners there I encounter who kind of get away with denying the council without denying the council. So they affirm that it's an ecumenical council. They affirm that Pope Francis is Pope Francis. They're not sede contest or anything. But the way they get out of it is they say that Vatican II was merely pastoral, and so it's not like authoritative in that way. So how should I respond to that?
Well, I'd respond charitably. You do hear this excuse used at various times, but it's simply not accurate. The council, first of all, you'll sometimes hear the council criticized as being the only pastoral council in history, the only one that didn't issue dogmatic definitions. And that's not true. There have been multiple councils, including among the Lateran councils, that didn't define any doctrines and that did not that were pastoral in their orientation. So it's not the only pastoral council, in case you hear that claim in the future. It's also not true that it is a purely pastoral council, which is the claim that you have been encountering. It does teach doctrine. Now, it chose not to, the council fathers chose not to infallibly define any new doctrines, but they did repeat infallible doctrines. You know, if you read, for example, Lumen Gentium or the one on the revision of the liturgy, they're going to talk about transubstantiation.
Oh, I see. Right.
They're going to talk about and they're not just mentioning the Catholic Church happens to believe in this. They're teaching it. We believe this.
Right.
So they are teaching doctrine, and that's made explicit in the titles of two of the constitutions that the council issued. Now, it issued a number of documents. They have different levels of authority. The top documents are known, the most authoritative ones are known as the constitutions, and there are 4 of them. One of them is Gaudium et Spes, and it is flagged as the pastoral constitution on the church in the modern world. So that is a pastoral document. That doesn't mean it doesn't contain elements of teaching, but it does mean that it has a primarily pastoral orientation. On the other hand, if you look at Lumen Gentium, it's flagged as the dogmatic constitution on the church. So this is a document that is, by its own self-description, meant to teach dogmatic teachings, dogmatic theology about the church. Also, the Pastoral Constitution Dei Verbum is the dogmatic constitution on the Word of God. And so it's another document that has explicitly doctrinal intentions. So these are teaching documents. They're oriented dogmatically, not simply pastorally. And any person who is open-minded and gives a fair reading to how the documents describe themselves will have to recognize that these are genuinely doctrinally oriented documents. And it's not just them. There's doctrine in some form found in virtually every document at Vatican II. In fact, probably in every document, although I'd have to, check just to verify. So while some of the documents have a more pastoral orientation, even those are built on doctrinal principles, and some of the documents are explicitly focused on teaching doctrine.
Bryce, I hope that's helpful to you. I'm going to leave it there. I hope that helps you answer those who make those objections, but lots of folks on the line, so I've got to keep moving. Next, going to Louisiana, James in Slidell, Louisiana, listening on AM 690. James, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call today.
Happy to.
My question is specifically in regards to tithing.
Mm-hmm.
I've always heard it said that you're expected to give 1/10 of whatever you make to the church. And my question is, where does that come from? And then second, whenever we give that 1/10, are we just expected to give it to our parish, or can we choose what organization in the church we're giving it to?
So tithing is an institution that goes back to the Old Testament, and the reason that 10% is involved is because that's what the word tithe means. Tithe is simply an old-fashioned word that means tenth. So the people of Israel were required to give God a tenth or a tithe of their produce. So if you grew a wheat crop, let's say, 10% of that wheat crop was supposed to go to God. And actually, there are some passages, the interpretation of them is a little complex, and we won't really go into it here, but there are actually some indications that even multiple tithes were at times used in ancient Israel. The thing is, they were part of the religious law for ancient Israel. They're not something, it's not a matter of natural law that you need to give God 10% rather than 9% or 12%. This was one of the ceremonial requirements of the Jewish law, and as a result, it's not binding on Christians today. So Christians today are not obliged to give a tithe. What they are obliged to do is support, and also the tithe could in part be used to support, in ancient Israel, like poor people. So it wasn't all just directly for the service of the temple. It also had other applications. And so we are required to use what we can from our resources to support charitable causes, including the church and including the poor and other charitable things as well, including Catholic Answers Live. But we're not bound by current canon law or by divine law to give any specific amount. Because really, even though 10% was a good rule of thumb in the ancient world, people's circumstances varied widely. I mean, even in the ancient world, if you were a slave, you didn't have any property to give. So you were not obliged to tithe. If you were a king and were wealthy, well, then you might, in God's eyes, need to give more than just a tenth. So even then, 10% was really kind of a guideline, and we don't need to be scrupulous about it today. But what we should do is make a conscientious effort to say, how much can I afford given my circumstances, including things like planning for retirement and supporting my children and so forth. How much can I afford to be generous and to give to charitable causes, including specifically religious ones? That should include institutions that you benefit personally from. So if you're going to your parish, you're benefiting from your parish. It should include your parish, but it can also include others that you benefit from as well as purely benevolent things where you maybe are giving to support the poor, even though you're not personally benefiting in that case.
Justin, thank you for your call. I'm going to leave it there and try to get as many as I can on with Jimmy in this hour of open forum we have today. We'll go next to British Columbia. In Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. Justin, watching on YouTube. Justin, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, guys. Just new in the Catholic Church, and so I I understand about praying the rosary now, how we use it to contemplate the mysteries of what the Lord Jesus did for us.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, when people say, like someone said to me, I'll pray a rosary for you. And then I was just trying to ask her, like what does that do? She she thought I was attacking her, but I said, no, I want to know, because I'm used to in Protestantism, someone says, could you pray for me? I'm pregnant. And so then I would say, Lord, please help so-and-so. They're pregnant. I ask that you keep them healthy and protect the baby as well. Amen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just want to see if someone says, I'll offer up a Hail Mary or I'll pray a rosary for you, what does that mean?
So in the Protestant context that you mentioned, what you were doing was a form of extemporaneous prayer, where you were basically, if you're praying for someone, you were making up the prayer as you go, and you were customizing the prayer to that person's circumstances, like in the case of the pregnant woman that you mentioned. That's something that also happens in Catholic circles. We do pray extemporaneously for other people, and we customize the prayer to their situation. But there are other options as well that are traditional in Catholic circles. If someone in a Catholic context says, I'll say a prayer for you, it might mean that they're going to say an extemporaneous prayer, but it might also mean that they're going to say a set prayer of some kind. Like if I'm praying the Our Father, I may say, have as one of my intentions, God, I'm going to say the Our Father now. If I please you by doing this, please help so-and-so with their pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Or whatever it may be. And the same thing with if they'll say a Hail Mary for you, or if they say an entire rosary for you, that's basically what's happening. They're going to say a set prayer, whether it's the Our Father or the Hail Mary or the entire rosary, and they're going to ask God to bless you in whatever your particular need is, if they please him by saying this set prayer.
Okay. So like how Paul says, we don't even know what to pray sometimes, and the Spirit groans on our behalf. Is that kind of it?
You're Romans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good job. It's the same thing. It also can be more specific. I mean, in St. Paul's case, where he says, sometimes we don't even know what to pray, but the Spirit who does know groans alongside of us. That's a case where we don't know, but we can have a more specific intention. Like if I know someone is having a difficult pregnancy or is just pregnant and, wants prayers for the safety of the baby, I could still say, God, please help this person with the safety of her baby if I please you when I say this Our Father or whatever it may be.
Justin, so happy that you've called and told us you're in the Catholic Church, and you need any more clarifications, call back, all right?
Thank you.
All right. God bless you, brother. Let's go to John in Kansas City, Missouri, listening on 1090 AM. John, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy. Last week I had a discussion with a Missouri Lutheran Synod gentleman, and he was adamant about if it's not in the Bible, that, they don't believe it. Mm-hmm. And so I said, did you know there was no Bible for approximately 400 years, that the church was just doing what Jesus commanded, and that is celebrating the Eucharist, do this in remembrance of me, and that the readings that were read there determine what books were going to be in the Bible? My first question is that statement accurate?
It's a little imprecise. I wouldn't say that there was no Bible. That could suggest that the books of the Bible had not been written. I would say that the canon of Scripture was not yet clear, and that it did take a number of centuries to be clarified, and so that's certainly accurate. And it's also true that the books that were read in the liturgy were the books that were supported and were supported broadly and included in the canon.
Okay, John?
His next question was on purgatory. Where is that? What is the best reference in the Bible for purgatory?
So there is a really clear one in 2 Maccabees, but because he's Missouri Synod Lutheran, he's not going to accept that one. Within the books that he will accept, 1 Corinthians 3 has a passage where Paul talks about how all of us are going to be tested, including the saved. We're going to be tested by fire, which presumably is a metaphor for divine judgment, not literal fire. But those who have done well will find after the testing that they're rewarded, and even those who have not done well, who have not lived the Christian life well, will still be saved, because we're talking about saved people here. They just won't get a reward, or at least not the same kind. There's more to say about all that, but I would suggest you check out Catholic.com. Just type in purgatory. Also, Carlo Broussard has a new book called Purgatory is for Real.
Thanks, John. We got to run. You can probably hear the music. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, is one of the most courageous leaders in the church, known for his outspoken support of unborn life, Orthodox faith and morals, and reforming Catholic institutions. In his groundbreaking new book, Light and Leaven, he offers a forthright perspective on the state of the church today and calls on the lay faithful to meet its challenges boldly. Touching on topics including parish renewal, the centrality of the Eucharist, the need for prayer and silence in a noisy and distracted age, and the battle between good and evil in the church and world, Bishop Strickland's wise insights and evident love for souls will inspire and edify you. To order your copy of Light and Leaven, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Matt Swaim here. Join us tomorrow for a Friday edition of the Sunrise Morning Show, when we look ahead to the Sunday Mass readings and hear Mark's account of Jesus calming the wind and the waves. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Thanks, Brandon. That's Brandon's first day running the soundboard, and he brought out the groovy music for Jimmy Akin.
Hey, awesome.
Thanks, Brandon. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Jimmy Akin is our guest, and it's open forum. You're welcome to call with whatever question you might have, 888-318-7884, and you're welcome to call whether you're Catholic or not, 888-318-7884. You probably know Jimmy from Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, or from all those books he wrote, or JimmyAkin.com, or Catholic Answers, or
the 28 years I've spent with Catholic Answers. Yeah,
that would do it. If you don't know about Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, though, do check it out. Tomorrow there's a new episode. It's on zombies.
Real ones.
Prepare yourselves.
Real, actual zombies, not fictional ones.
Almost 200 mysteries now covered already. In 160s.
Yeah, 160s.
Of mysteries. Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. All right, let's see who's on the line for open forum now. Mitch in Wisconsin, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. Mitch, we're glad to have you. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi. So I recently received a call from my brother who told me that he was engaged, and he's baptized and everything, but he's not keeping the faith. And I understand that canon law requires that people who are baptized in the Catholic Church have a Catholic wedding or at least receive a dispensation.
Right.
And so my question is twofold of, can he, or is it possible for him to receive a dispensation just to marry like in a secular setting? And then also, is it possible for him to receive a dispensation even if he's, not practicing and very probably not likely to raise his kids Catholic?
So both of those, before I get to them, they're the less than ideal scenarios. The ideal scenario is this is an invitation for him to start taking his faith seriously again. And so, now you know him better than I do, but the ideal would be to say something like, hey, congratulations, this is great. Now, by the way, since you're Catholic, I know you haven't been practicing lately, but since you're Catholic, you're a citizen of the Catholic Church, and just like if you're a citizen of the state of Wisconsin, let's say, you need to observe the state of Wisconsin's marriage laws. Well, as a citizen of the Catholic Church, you need to do the same with the church's marriage laws. So you need to have a Catholic wedding. I mean, there are other options, but that's the ideal. So this is a great opportunity for you to kind of reappropriate your faith and get your marriage off to a good foundation, because marriages, between people who are serious about their faith last longer than people who are not serious about their faith. And also the Catholic Church has really good marriage preparation courses that can help make sure that you and your fiancé have covered all the bases you need to, so you don't have surprises after you get married that could make it rocky. And so, I'd encourage you to go ahead and explore all this, and I'd be happy to help. The help is as close as your local parish. Now, if he doesn't buy that, if he doesn't go for that, then yeah, it is possible for him to receive what's known as a dispensation from form, which means he doesn't have to observe the Catholic form of marriage. Typically, that's done when a Catholic is marrying, let's say, another Christian from another denomination, and they're going to have a marriage in that other denomination. So like, let's say a Catholic is marrying a Lutheran and they want to have the wedding in the Lutheran church. Well, it's possible to get a dispensation from form for that. It's not as common, my understanding is, although this may have changed, I don't know, over the last few decades, to have a dispensation for a purely secular wedding. But it is commonly done if you're having some kind of other religious wedding. The fact that he's not participating in his faith doesn't at the moment, and if he continues not to participate in it, that's something that wouldn't automatically mean he wouldn't obtain a dispensation from form, but it could be an additional barrier. That's really going to depend on how the local diocese handles those and what requirements it has.
Mitch, God bless you as you talk to your brother. Thanks very, very much for the call. There's lots of folks on the line. I'm going to keep moving. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. We're going to Washington, D.C. now. Leah in Washington, D.C., watching on YouTube Live. You are next, Leah. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for taking my question. So a friend posed this to me. He's been thinking about how we as Catholics can respond to critiques of Christianity based on the thought that our use of the Old Testament is wrong because it's like cultural appropriation of like Jewish people's literature.
I have not heard that one before, Leah.
Jimmy's take.
Okay.
Apparently, it's on Twitter a lot.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I'm going to give you my polite response to that. I also have an impolite response or a less polite response that I'll keep to myself, but it involves laughter. I would say if someone is making this claim, they simply are unaware of the history of Christianity, because Jesus was a Jew, and so were the 12 apostles, and so were almost all of the writers of the New Testament. They were all Jewish. They were all steeped in the Old Testament scriptures. They quote the Old Testament scriptures all the time in the Bible. I mean, in the New Testament. part of the Bible. It's constantly quoting the Old Testament. And so Christianity is a Jewish movement. In fact, speaking from a Christian point of view, it's the fulfillment of the Jewish aspirations of the Old Testament. You have passages in the Old Testament where Jeremiah prophesies on God's behalf that there's going to be a new covenant that's different than the one that God established through Moses. That's Jeremiah 31. And Jesus announces it. He says, this is the new covenant in my blood when he institutes the Eucharist. Similarly, if you look in the book of Isaiah, like in the last chapter of Isaiah, it's talking about how Gentiles are going to come to God and he's going to take some of them to be priests. Well, that's happened. We now have Gentiles incorporated into God's family, and some of them are priests. So just because there are many Gentiles meaning non-Jewish people, in the Christian church, doesn't mean that it's an exclusively Gentile thing. It's not. Christianity is essentially, historically, it's a branch of Judaism. And as a result, we have as much right to appeal to God's revelation in the Old Testament as anybody else does. And it's not just us. It's not even Christians, because the Old Testament is God's word to mankind, just like the New Testament is. And God wants his revelation. He wants his word to be known by everybody. So whether you're Jewish or Christian or anything else, you should be studying God's word in the Bible, including in the Old Testament, to see what God has to say, because it's God's message to mankind, not just to one group of people. It's really for everybody. And it's great that we can all be united in this way as God's children and not have to worry about playing tribal games about who's culturally appropriating from whom, because we're all God's children, and that's the fundamental and most important thing.
Leah, is that acceptable to you?
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the next episode of Mysterious World.
Awesome.
It's zombies. I don't know. How do you feel about zombies? Does it make you nervous?
I'm interested to see what Jimmy's take is on it.
As we all are. Thanks, Leah. Thanks very much. We'll take a quick break and be right back. There's lots of folks on the line, lots more open forum with Jimmy Akin to come right after this.
Catholic Answers Live with Jimmy Akin is coming right back.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Go forth and preach the good news. It's not just a suggestion. If you want to take more seriously the command of Jesus to share the gospel with those around you, consider joining St. Paul Street Evangelization. It's a grassroots organization that brings the Catholic faith to the streets in a non-confrontational way. Visit our website, www.streetevangelization.com, to learn more. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. It's time to do our part.
Check out EWTN's official YouTube channel.
Just follow the link on our homepage at EWTN.com or go to YouTube.com/EWTN.
Watch EWTN's live shows or today's homily from the Daily Mass.
Click the upload button to see our most recent clips.
You can also find all of EWTN YouTube content by clicking the playlist button.
It's all on the official EWTN YouTube channel at YouTube.com/EWTN.
Visit today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Lots of folks helping us out today who don't usually. It's nice to see Andrew back on the video. But Nathaniel, first day on the phones, right? First time he's on the... Great job, Nathaniel.
Are they helping us? Some of them are just sitting in chairs.
Well, no, the social media man there, he has to do social media. So that's why he's looking down at his phone.
Okay.
Marie is actually training Nathaniel at the
Darren
moment.
is training Brandon.
Darren's training Brandon. And Brandon doing a great
they
job.
actually are helping. That's good then.
Yeah, a lot of helping going on in there. It's only on Fridays that everyone comes in to get snacks in here, just hoping that there will be some kind of Friday snack. Brandon, just killing it, doing a super, super good job. Now I forget where I'm going. Oh, I'm going to Cleveland. Nancy in Cleveland, Ohio, you're up next. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Thank you so much for taking my question. And my question is, was there ever a time only priests and bishops could partake of the Eucharist?
No, there has never been such a time. Even at the Last Supper, when Jesus appointed the apostles priests, there likely were other people there in that household at that meal. We know that the 12 apostles were there because we're told, but it never says they were the only ones there. And in a typical household, especially because they were borrowing the upper room, there was already a family living there, that family was probably included as well. Subsequent to the Last Supper, we have abundant evidence in the New Testament of Christians taking the Eucharist. It is never restricted to only the clergy, and it never has been down through history. Now, there have been times in history where people where there have been regulations in parts of the church, and this is only in parts of the church. Like in the West, for example, it was common for the laity to only receive under the form of bread rather than under the form of wine under ordinary circumstances. But there were exceptions even then. And in other parts of the church, the laity would receive both at once. Such as in some of the Eastern Catholic churches, you'll have the leavened host actually soaked in the precious blood, and you get
Scoop.
both at once from a little spoon that they put in your mouth. There have also in the West been times where people's sensibilities were such that they didn't go to communion frequently. They might, out of reverence, say, I'm not going to receive right now because I haven't been to confession recently, and whether they had mortal sins they needed to confess or not, their personal piety was such that they didn't want to receive frequently. Now, in the 20th century, the magisterium began something of a push to change that, to encourage more frequent reception of communion as long as people are legitimately ready to receive it. But there has never been a time where the laity were forbidden to receive the Eucharist.
Okay, Nancy?
Oh, yes. I appreciate it. There was a discussion last night at a group of Catholics, and so that absolutely answers the question. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the call. Let's go right back here to California. Joseph here in California, watching on YouTube Live. You're next, Joseph. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi, Jimmy. So my question is about Mark 2:7, where the Pharisees state, where they're saying, "Who can forgive sin except God?"
Mm-hmm.
And then Jesus answers and says, "The Son of Man has been given authority to forgive sin." My question is why does he identify himself as the Son of Man who can forgive sin rather than God who forgives sin? And then does that have something to do with John 20:23, where the Son of Man gives authority to his apostles to forgive sin?
Yeah, so the Son of Man, the title Son of Man, it sounds to us today like it's an affirmation of his humanity.
Right.
And it's because it is used that way sometimes in the Old Testament. Like God will be talking to Ezekiel and he'll say, "Son of Man." And all he means by that is human being.
Yeah.
Well, it's possible that Jesus is specifically calling to mind his human side when he's saying this, that God has given this authority to him, not just as God, but specifically as the incarnate human Messiah. So it's not simply because he's God. He is God, but he's been delegated this as part of his messianic role, which involves his humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that thought actually is at least hinted at in the parallel in Matthew, where Matthew notes that when Jesus makes the leper walk and thus proves the paralytic walk, and thus that he has the authority to do this, the crowd who's there glorifies God who has given such authority to men. And it's plural in the Greek, not just one man, to men, suggesting that there is a broader sharing of this. And I think Matthew's writing it that way because Matthew knows what's going to happen in John 20,
right.
where Jesus shares it even more broadly and gives it to his disciples as well, to his ministers. And so, yeah, I think these are all linked. I can't say for 100% that when he uses Son of Man in Mark, that's meant to specifically call out his humanity, because the term Son of Man also in Second Temple period literature could be used as for a heavenly divine figure. So there's a little bit of ambiguity there, but it certainly suggests that, and that human dimension is certainly drawn out in Matthew's parallel, and it's then emphasized in John 20, where he definitely shares the ability to do this with his ministers.
Joseph, thanks very, very much for the call. There's still a couple lines open if you want to give us a call, 888-318-7884. We'll try our best to get you on before the top of the hour. We go now to Jackson. It says Jackson, Michigan. Perhaps that's correct. Janet in Jackson, you there with us?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
How are you? I heard your earlier discussion about tithing, and I need you to clear something up for me because I get great joy and blessing from tithing. And that is, I understood that you were indicating that tithing isn't obligatory since the passing away of the old Jewish customs and Jewish laws of the Old Testament.
Correct.
And I was reminded of a story that I can't give you a citation for, but I know you can tell me what it is. And that is regarding a man and a wife who are referred to in the New Testament as having been stricken dead by God because they didn't bring their full contribution into the community. Do you know the passage I'm talking about?
I do. It's Acts chapter 5, and the man is named Ananias and the woman is named Sapphira.
Yes. So reconcile the earlier discussion with that for me, if you would, please.
Sure. So first of all, I don't want to discourage you from tithing at all. I think tithing is a great practice. And so if tithing works for you, awesome, more power to you. I just want to make sure that people know it's not obligatory. But just because it's not obligatory doesn't mean it's not a great thing to do. In terms of the specific passage you're thinking of, so in Acts chapter 5, what's going on is we have a situation where at the Jerusalem church, many people are selling their property and bringing the proceeds to the apostles who then distributed it within the Christian community. So they're basically doing a kind of commune situation, or as they call them in Israel, a kibbutz. And this is a voluntary thing. You don't have to sell your property. But Ananias and Sapphira chose to. They had a piece of property. They got an ancient realtor or whatever and sold it off and got the money for it. And then they kept part of the money for themselves, which was fine. They were entitled to do that. But what they weren't entitled to do was take the other part of the money to the apostles and lie about it and say, this is all the money we got for the property we sold.
Yeah.
And that was their mistake. And so when Peter confronts them about this, he says, look, when the property was yours, you could do whatever you want with it. You know, you could have sold it. You could have, implicitly, you could sell it, and you could have kept it. You could have sold it. You could have kept all the money for yourself. What you did, though, was you lied to the Holy Spirit, because he was lying to the apostles, and they're the agents of the Holy Spirit. And so he lied not to men, as Peter says, but to God. And that's the reason that Ananias and Sapphira are stricken. It's not because they didn't give 10% or any specific amount. It's because they were lying about what they did give.
Okay, Janet?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you,
No
Janet.
problem.
It was a pleasure to talk with you. Let's go to Atlanta, Georgia now. Pablo in Atlanta, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. Go ahead, Pablo, with your question, please.
Okay, thank you guys for taking my call. My question is very simple. I wanted advice on how to respond to an atheist whom I told that only God knows our innermost motives and reasons on why we do things. So he said, well, if God already knows our innermost feelings and motives, how come he tests people if he already knows what the outcome is going to be? And he already knows what's in their minds and hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives the example of Abraham. No?
Okay.
So I didn't know how to respond to that, so I wanted to see if you had some advice for me.
Okay. So the first thing I would say is that we have, because Abraham lived around 1800 BC, and we're now in the 21st century, and so that was like 3,800 years ago. And it was also at the very beginning of God's walk with his people. I mean, Abraham was the first guy, that he chose to become the ancestor of the nation of Israel. And so this is at a very early stage, and God had not revealed very much about himself yet. And so even at the time Genesis was written, about 800 years after Abraham's time, still they didn't have as refined an understanding of God and his nature as we do today. And because God's has had a lot more time to reveal himself to us, and he's shown us more, including sending us his own son, and he's let the Holy Spirit guide the church and, have a more precise understanding. So we don't expect the author of Genesis to have exactly the same understanding of God that we do today. And the way the author of Genesis presents it, at least on the surface, it does look like God is testing Abraham to find out information. Now, that may have even been how Abraham perceived it, based on Abraham's own understanding of God at the time. But we can go further because God has given us new information about him. It's kind of like the difference of understanding a child may have of a situation versus the understanding an adult may have of what's going on. And so since Abraham was just beginning his walk with God, he may have thought, I'm literally being tested here. But from an adult perspective, there may be something else going on. You might have, for example, let's say, Sai, you've had children.
Yes.
I can imagine a scenario where, let's say you were teaching your kid to swim, and you say to the child, I want to find out if you can swim. And really, you're confident he can swim, but he's not confident. And so to show him that he can, you as a father say, let's find out. And you put him in the water, and he is able to swim.
Right.
I'm not necessarily saying throw him into the water, although that has been done by some parents.
It's one technique.
But I can imagine a situation where, your son is not confident of something, and even though you're confident, you say, let's find out. And you then put him in the situation, and you're verified in your understanding of what he would be able to do. And the key thing, though, is he now knows it too.
Right.
And so Abraham, we would, from a more advanced perspective on Genesis, we would say that that's what's going on here. In part, God is revealing to Abraham that Abraham's loyalties really are with God. God already knows what Abraham's going to do in this situation. But by having Abraham go through it, it reveals it to Abraham as well. Now, there are other aspects of this text, like God is teaching some other lessons here, like child sacrifice is not my will. This is something that would be used later when the Israelites were tempted to sacrifice their children to pagan deities. Well, no, you can point right back to Abraham. God rejected that. That's not his will. So there are multiple lessons going on here, but today, based on the subsequent revelation God has given us, we have a clearer picture, just like an adult has a clearer understanding of a given situation than a child at the beginning of his learning may.
And we have to leave it there. Pablo, thanks very much for that. Hey, tomorrow we get Jimmy back. 2 hours of your Bible questions.
Oh.
And did you know that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. Suddenly I panicked. Am I reading the wrong day? Bring your Bible questions, whether you're Catholic or not, whether you're Christian or not. If it's something in the Bible you want to know, give us a call. Jimmy's the author of The Bible is a Catholic Book, and we welcome your call. Jimmy, thanks again.
My pleasure, Cy Kellett.
Another great hour. See you tomorrow, Jimmy Akin.
Okay.
And we'll see you all tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.